Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday to you all. It is so delightful that you've taken the time to join us for daily devotions through Redeeming Life Fellowship. It's a little bit cold this morning, so I've got my hot coffee and we're ready to jump into John chapter 18, verses 1 through 18. John chapter 18, verses 1 through 18. And what we're about to see is where the narrative of Jesus's book of glory, the second half of his entire book, really does turn dark, where there is a spiritual darkness that's just hovering over the entire narrative because of what it is that Jesus is about to endure for your sake and for mine. And it makes it a little bit hard to read, especially when maybe you've had this trouble, or my trouble as well, where it's easy to want to rush through a passage like this and get to the happy ending of the resurrection and the ascension and Jesus's reunited fellowship with his disciples, where everything is just hunky-dory. And it's easy to want to assume a lot of things that we take for granted and happen to know about the crucifixion story, and just become overfamiliar with it and lose some of the thrust or some of the weightiness that that Jesus, or that John wants us to feel, even as we're reading through what happened to Jesus on this night that he was betrayed. And one of the things that I think that is important for us to remember as we're reading a passage like this, which is the first scene in John's crucifixion act, if I cannot see God's divine hand orchestrating events around what would happen to be, what would be by any measure regarded as the most egregious miscarriage of human justice ever known on the face of the planet, then I might read what's about to happen and not actually see the hand of God at work in accomplishing his purposes in human history through the arrest, the betrayal, the arrest, the sentencing, the scourging, the death, the humiliation, the suffering of Jesus, and not see the hand of God that is still presently at work in these events that we're reading. And one of the things that we'll get in here, because let's jump back just for a second and then we'll get to the passage. When somebody is arrested, it means, in short, I suppose you could say, that they've become powerless, that they've, that whatever power or autonomy that they've had is now under arrest, under power or seizure of a higher power, so that the person who's arrested has in effect become powerless. They've come under the power of the law. And how do we think of somebody who is as high and lofty and powerful, and who wields the kind of divine authority like Jesus does? How does a man like that come under arrest? And we might think, if perhaps he's coming under arrest and is enduring this kind of scourging and crucifixion, if this is the same person who washes the disciples' feet, then if this is what happens to him, maybe he really isn't who it is that he thought he was. But look and see what it is that's happened. The first moment that in John's account of what happens when these people come to arrest Jesus. And ask yourself, even as these people are coming to arrest Jesus, whose word is actually carrying power or authority? And if you can see whose word is actually carrying power or an authority in this arrest scene, you might then ask yourself, Is Jesus going, being arrested because he has no power or authority over them, or rather because he's going willingly to endure the sort of things that he's about to endure? Is this the sort of thing that Jesus is going, not despite the will of God, but because of the will of God? Whose word in the passage that we're about to read actually carries power and authority? And if it carries power and authority here and now, that should give us a lens for interpreting or seeing the hand of God and his authority and his power that is surrounding these events that are about to take place. So with that in mind, let's read John chapter 18, verses 1 through 18. When he had finished praying, Jesus left with his disciples and crossed the Kidron Valley. On the other side, there was an olive grove, and he and his disciples went into it. Now Judas, who betrayed him, knew the place because Jesus had often met there with his disciples. So Judas came to the grove, guiding a detachment of soldiers and some officials from the chief priests and Pharisees. They were carrying torches, lanterns, and weapons. Jesus, knowing all that was going to happen to him, went out and asked them, "Who is it you want?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "I am he," Jesus said, and Judas the traitor was standing there with them. When Jesus said, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. Again he asked them, "Who is it you want?" And they said, "Jesus of Nazareth." "I told you that I am he," Jesus answered. "If you are looking for me, then let these men go." This happened so that the words he had spoken would be fulfilled. "I have not lost one of those you gave me." Then Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant, cutting off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. Jesus commanded Peter, "Put your sword away. Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me?" Then the detachment of soldiers with its commander and the Jewish officials arrested Jesus. They bound him and brought him first to Annas, who was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest that year. Caiaphas was the one who advised the Jews that it would be good if one man died for the people. It's worth mentioning at this point that, well, a few things appear to be happening. Let me draw them out for you. One, it's generally understood in Jewish law that you could not be tried and sentenced on the same day, that you would have to have the trial and the evidence and the arguments and the defense laid out on one day, but that you couldn't actually pronounce a sentence on that same day. That would have to come later. But what appears to be happening by bringing him to Annas, who was deposed of the high priesthood in about AD 15, is that they are bringing him to be tried to this person who's not even the high priest, but who is probably respected and still regarded as the father-in-law of Caiaphas. That this is their rash way of rushing through what would be quote-unquote due process in order to be able to carry out a sentence on Jesus as quickly and efficiently as possible, because what they know is that they're probably not going to get, well, what to their minds, they're probably not going to get another chance to dispose of Jesus and liquidate him as quickly and efficiently as possible, so that they can get Jesus out of the way and carry on with their own plans. That they have to see that he's betrayed, see that he's tried, see that he's sentenced, see that he's handed over to Pilate, the procurator at the time, and sentenced and killed and out of the way as quickly and efficiently as possible. So this is still a very rushed miscarriage of justice, because they know that they have to do this thing and do it quickly, because time is not on their side. But with that, let's keep going. And Simon Peter and another disciple were following Jesus. Because this disciple was known to the high priest, he went with Jesus into the high priest's courtyard, but Peter had to wait outside at the door. The other disciple, who was known to the high priest, came back, spoke to the girl on duty, and brought Peter in. "You are not one of his disciples, are you?" the girl at the door asked Peter. He replied, "I am not." It was cold, and the servants and the officials stood around a fire they had made to keep warm. Peter was also standing with them, warming himself. Even while Jesus is being tried, Peter is still concerned with his own comforts, and it's clear that he talks big, but at this point is not walking what it is that he talked. So Simon Peter is in a bad light. And even at each stage of these things, isn't it interesting how John, even at this first scene of the crucifixion, is weaving together prophetic strands about what's happened. One, in saying to let these people go so that the prophecy would be fulfilled, that Jesus would not lose one of them, that the word that would be prophesied unwittingly by Caiaphas would be happening also at this stage, through the hand on the judgment of his father-in-law Annas, and then also even up to Peter's betrayal, that Jesus predicted was going to happen, that before the rooster crows, you will deny that you even know me 3 times. That all of these things are happening, which should remind us that even here, even at this moment, that the hand of God is at work, his sovereignty, his power, his dominion to bring about his purposes for Jesus, for his disciples, and for the world, for you and for me, is being accomplished, even here, even now, even at his arrest. And that's the sort of thing that I think gives us a lens for everything that we're about to read following, so that we can look and recognize what God has done through Jesus, through the giving of his life, that was not taken from him as he was arrested, mistried, crucified, and buried. But rather, all of this happens because Jesus is giving his life. He is the one who is in control. It's his word that has authority and power to knock people back when he says that I am he. Jesus, through all of this, is humbling himself, who's yielding to these forces and these powers so that he can not have his life taken from him, but that he can give his life to actually live out what he said that he would do, what he was doing in John 3:16, that God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him would not perish, but actually have everlasting life. So, thank you so much for joining us for Daily Devotions. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and check out our podcasts and look at our opportunities for being able to support us financially through this church plant here in Whitley County and in Huntington. And I pray that each and every one of us would continue to grow in our walk with Jesus and our living relationship with God, as we don't just talk the talk, but walk the walk that Jesus has called us upon in following him, being his disciples, and growing mature disciples here at Redeeming Life Fellowship. So God bless you, and I will see you next time. Take care.